Hi, welcome back to the Summer Rain channel. Today we're going to learn how to make melt and pour soap. So we're going to make two different soaps and they both have coffee beans in them. Without further ado, let's go ahead and learn how to make these coffee bean melt and pour soaps. For phase one of this soap, we are going to put the coffee beans into the clear melt and pour soap. Now I break the melt and pour soap out into 3 layers because I want the coffee beans to be sandwiched right in the middle of the soap. I don't want it all to float to the top. I want it right in the middle. The first layer I put 1 ounce of soap, and then the next 2 are 1.5 ounces. So let's go ahead, let's take 1 ounce of soap, pop it in the microwave, and I will be back when it's melted. Melted the first layer, let's pour it into our mold. And then to pop any bubbles, just spray with rubbing alcohol. Now we're going to allow this to cool slightly. We don't want it to cool all the way, but we want to make sure there's a nice layer, like if you were to touch it with your finger, that it wouldn't poke all the way through before we do the next layer of soap. While this layer of soap is cooling, I'm going to go ahead and pop 1.5 ounces of clear melt and pour soap in the microwave. That way it can start cooling. So when this layer is cool enough, I'm ready to pour the next one. And then I kind of just place the coffee beans where you're going to want them to be. That way you can see how many you need. Now, remember when you pour the next layer of soap, these are just going to scatter all about. But this way I know how many beans are going to kind of be in the finished soap. So when you're doing layers, you want to make sure that you use rubbing alcohol and you spray it in between the layers, and it's sort of like a glue that's going to help the soap stay together. Now be careful, because if you put too much, it's going to do the opposite and it will like repel the soap. So just a spray or two in between every layer is what you want to use. You also want to make sure that your next layer of melt and pour soap isn't too hot, otherwise it'll melt the layer below it. So you want your melt and pour soap to be at roughly 130 degrees Fahrenheit, and just use a thermometer to make sure you're in the right temperature range. So we'll go ahead and spray our soap with rubbing alcohol. See, I'm right about at 130 degrees. And we will go ahead and pour this. Now, like I said, these coffee beans are going to go everywhere on you. But just go ahead and move them to where you want them to be. Now, I kind of envision where I'm going to cut the soap, and then I push the coffee beans out of the way. That way it's going to be a lot easier when I cut it. Same thing, we're going to allow this to cool a little bit before we do the next layer. So I just want to show you how the layers should be before you pour the next layer of soap. See how it's cooled, but not so much that it's all the way cooled completely. If it's cooled completely, your layers are not going to stick together properly. They will break apart. So what you want to do is find a balancing act where there's enough on there so your coffee beans don't float to the top, but not cooled all the way. You also want to make sure that the soap that you're pouring is roughly 130 degrees Fahrenheit so you don't melt the layer that's underneath of it. And I'm just about there. So we'll go ahead, spray with rubbing alcohol. And then pour the rest of your soap. Spray the top to get rid of any bubbles. Now we're going to allow this to cool completely. So the soap is cooled completely, so I'm going to go ahead, pop it out of the mold, and see how the coffee beans are in the center. They're not on the top or on the bottom. Now we're just going to go ahead and cut this. Again, I'm going to cut in between the layers of the coffee bean. Not the straightest cuts you ever seen, but so now what we'll do is go ahead and place them how we want them in the soap. So I'm going to put that one in the middle, and then I'll do these two on the sides. I have 4 ounces of white melt and pour soap that I'm going to go ahead and melt now. Now in the clear soap base, I didn't add any fragrance oil, but in the white I do like to. The reason why I don't add it to the clear is I don't want anything to make it cloudy or discolor or anything like that. But I do want this to be a scented soap. And just mix that up. And I'm just going to let this cool a little bit more. So this melt and pour is cooled enough, so we will go ahead and start by spraying inside in between the soaps. And then after you pour it, spray to pop any bubbles. And repeat on the next one. And now we'll just allow this to cool completely. Okay, so you want to make sure that you allowed your soap to cool completely before you remove it from the mold. And then you just simply pop it out. As you can see, sometimes you're going to get where the soap came over onto the clear soap. If you grab your cleaning tool, you can easily clean that up. And then after you get them cleaned up, those are your finished soaps. I hope you enjoyed the video.